Hey everyone, it's Charlie here. I'm the head tutor of the English Accelerator program. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing 3 tips that you can use to improve your child's writing skills. Now, over the last 12 months, I've worked with more than 500 students to help them improve their English skills, but particularly their writing skills, because writing is an area where a lot of students, they find it difficult and they don't enjoy it. And I know when I was in school, I didn't particularly enjoy writing a lot of the time because I really didn't understand what does it take to become a really strong writing student. I didn't understand how to improve, and often the feedback I was getting from teachers was not very regular and it was just a few scribbles on the side of a page. And so in this video, I'm going to share 3 key tips that you can use with your child to help them improve their writing scores and their writing overall, but also hopefully you'll help them to start to build a bit more confidence so they start to enjoy writing more and they don't have so much fear about sitting down and doing a writing task. Now, this first tip is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of students, they don't even want to start writing. They don't want to do their writing homework. They put it off. And this tip is writing structure. So I'm going to show you a few writing pieces in just a moment. But what you'll notice is when you don't know how to structure your writing, it is pretty scary getting started. You don't know what to put down first, you don't know what to put down second, and it's very hard to get yourself into the flow of writing when you don't know how to structure your writing really, really well. And so for most students, the first thing I initially focus on with them is let's make sure they know how to structure what they're writing really well. They know exactly how to structure it. So when they sit down, they're not thinking, well, I could be writing anything. They know I've got a clear structure that I can use to write something that's simple, it's easy to understand, and it's also easy for me as the student who's writing it to know what to do, what to put down on paper. And so we can see here, this is an example, someone who's more so in primary school, and they say the elephant is on the tree and the elephant is super happy because the elephant is looking at the sun. And so you can see here, this student has written a little bit of a passage around an elephant on a tree, but it's lacking structure. It's one big long sentence. There's not really any logic to the way it's structured, which is where most students start. A lot of students start in this camp where they're writing a little bit, but it's not structured very clearly or coherently. This student here was a little bit older, and so you can see again, they've structured into 3 paragraphs, but even though it's in 3 paragraphs, it doesn't really logically make sense. This first paragraph here is talking about, well, why would it be beneficial for another person to be in charge of your thoughts? This one here, well, there's sort of some other information and some other information here. And both of these were actually meant to be creative pieces. They're meant to be stories. And you can see they both don't really look like stories. And so for both of these students, really the key thing, for this one here, who was a little bit younger, for this one here, who was a little bit older, structure is the key thing that's holding them back from probably having more confidence in their writing, but also drastically improving their writing right away. And so what we'd normally do for these types of students is we would show them, well, how do you structure a narrative story? Because a narrative story, it's actually very simple in that there's 3 key parts. There's a beginning. There's a beginning of the story. Often when you first learn story writing, you'll just have the beginning as one paragraph on its own. So you have one whole paragraph focused on the beginning. In the beginning, you need just 3 key things. We need to know who are the characters, where are they? So that's the setting. And then what problem are they facing? So for example, we could easily have the problem, in this case here, where we could have the characters is an elephant. The elephant is sitting on a tree. And what problem is the elephant facing? Well, maybe the elephant's stuck on the tree. They can't get down. If you had that in an opening paragraph, the beginning of the story, that would be a really good start to the story. And so once you start to understand how to structure stories, it becomes a lot easier. Beginning, we need 3 key things. We need to know who the characters are, where are they, and what problem are they facing. So in this example we're talking about, the student could say there's an elephant, he's stuck on a tree in the desert, and he can't get down from the tree. That's the beginning. We then have the middle. This is where the characters try and fix the problem. Whatever problem happened at the start of the story, we're now trying to fix it. And that's all that needs to happen in that middle paragraph. So the first paragraph, we know what we had there. There was an elephant stuck on the tree and they couldn't get down. In the middle, the elephant is trying different ways to get off the tree, but they're just too heavy. They can't quite get themselves down. And so the middle is just where they're trying to fix a problem, but they haven't quite fixed it yet. And then finally, the final paragraph would be the ending. So we would have the first 2 paragraphs. 3rd paragraph is the ending. All we need to do here when we first learn story writing is just show how the problem is fixed and solved. So for example, in this case, we could say, well, in the first paragraph, the elephant was stuck on the tree. They couldn't get down. 2nd paragraph, they tried a few different things to get down. It didn't work. At the end, there was a big gust of wind. It knocked the elephant off the tree and they went off into the jungle with their friends. And so that's a simple example of how for both of these students here, this student who wrote a little bit less and who was a little bit younger, and this student who wrote a little bit more and was a little bit older, they're both writing creative stories, but the thing that was holding them back was structure. If they knew straight away, let's just split it into 3 paragraphs, beginning, middle, and end. Each of those paragraphs, there's very specific things that need to happen in them. Immediately, it's going to be easier for them to start writing because they know what to put in each paragraph. They're going to feel more confident because they know what to do, but their writing scores are going to drastically improve. If both of these students just did this one thing, it's probably the difference between bumping them up 1 or 2 marks right away. So that's tip 1, which is writing structure. Now, the second tip is a very simple one. A lot of people often, they hear this tip and then they don't do it. And then later on when they're in year 11 or year 12 or in university, they realize just how important it is. This is probably the biggest thing that I do with my own writing to improve the quality of it, which is reading it out aloud. So very often what you'll notice is when you start writing, you write things down on paper, and if you go back and read it out aloud, all the areas where the sentences are hard to read, there's punctuation missing, there's clear errors and sentences that don't make sense, they all become clear when you read it out aloud. Because the truth is, the best writing is just how we speak. We can all speak clearly, we can all speak coherently, we can all speak in a way that makes sense. And so if we just translate that onto paper, the quality of our writing is going to drastically improve. And this is something that's often a really big unlock for a lot of students when they realize that if they can just write how they speak, that's drastically going to improve the quality of their writing. And so, for example, for this student here, this was a student where we said, let's read it out aloud and pick up areas where it doesn't sound too good. So my stance is the climate change is a very concerning issue of our time. And so for this student, we said, well, if I was speaking to you in a conversation and I said, my stance is the climate change is a very concerning issue of our time, would that make sense? And he said, no, it wouldn't really make sense. You would probably say something like, my stance is that climate change is one of the most concerning issues of our time. And so we changed it there. We said, my stance is that climate change is one of the most concerning issues of our time. And right away, the tweaks became clear. And so what you'll notice is when you start reading it out aloud, you'll pick up these things very easily. And so this is a simple thing you can do with your child. You can read out their writing out loud and use that and say, well, would this make sense? If you said this to me in real life, would that be the way we would normally speak? And you can use that to improve their writing. Otherwise, getting your child to do it as well is a very effective way of improving their writing. A lot of students, once they start doing this, again, it really improves the quality of their writing because it allows them to pick up the sentences which aren't as strong as they could be. And so second tip is reading it out aloud. The third tip is probably one of the most important ones, which is writing weekly and getting feedback. To improve in any skill, writing is just like a skill, like any other skill. And to improve in it, you need to be writing every single week and you need to be getting feedback every single week. If you write every week but you don't get feedback, then you're not going to improve because you're not going to know where are you doing well, what should you keep doing, and where do you need to get some help and what do you need to focus on. And so what we generally recommend for our students is we get them writing every single week. We actually like to get them writing twice, one which is more of a practice task and then one where they really focus on it, submit it to us and get feedback. And the best way of getting feedback, in my opinion, is showing your child one key strength, one key thing that they did very well that you want them to keep doing, but then one key thing to focus on. And that means you will ignore some things. You're not going to tell them every single thing that they could improve because you just want to give them one thing to focus on in their next writing piece. Hopefully they make a lot of progress there and then you can give them another thing to focus on. The biggest way people often go wrong with feedback is it's just too nitpicky. Every single word is this word spelled wrong, this sentence was grammatically wrong, and it just overwhelms a child. They just think, oh, there's so much to fix. This isn't very fun. Whereas if you just say, look, your spelling in this one was really good. There was quite a few difficult words here and you spelled them very, very well. So your spelling is looking quite good. Let's keep that up. Keep using words which you know how to spell. That's really improving the quality of your writing. One key thing to improve though is that it's lacking a bit of detail. And so what about for the next piece? There's only one thing to focus on, which is just writing more. You only wrote 3 sentences for this one. Let's write 10. Or for another student with some of those ones we saw, it might be, look, some of the sentences are a little bit hard to read. All I want you to do for the next piece is read it out aloud and try and find every single sentence that doesn't sound very easy to read. It's not very clear, it sounds a little bit strange when you read it, and try and fix them up and submit it. And that's immediately going to improve your writing. And so with feedback, Number one, get them writing every single week. Number two, make sure that feedback is really clear. I'll show you how we present this to students in our program. So for students in our program, this is how we present the feedback to them. They get this little report here on our platform where it gives them a score out of 10. So for example, this student got a 7. And this is really good because the students like to be able to measure their progress over time. They like to see, okay, I was starting around a 4 or 5, bumped it up to 6, 7, and seeing that improvement. It's really quite motivating. We give them a clear strength. So for example, this student here, it was writing depth. We give them a clear area of improvement, which is descriptive language, and they then focus on that for the next week. And then we then have a look at them again and give them feedback every single week. But you can see, if all you do is you write every single week and you get feedback, you're guaranteed to improve. There's almost no way you're not going to improve. If you write, you get feedback, you listen to the feedback, you try and incorporate it into the next piece. It's really the simplest way of helping your child improve their writing skills in a very fast and effective way. And so that's tip number 3, which is writing weekly and receiving feedback. And so in this video, we've gone through 3 key tips that you can use as a parent to improve your child's writing skills. The first one was writing structure, where we spoke about how once your child has a structure, it will make them easier to start writing, but it'll also give them more clarity about how to structure their writing, what to put down on pen and paper. Generally, for a lot of students, this bumps them up a couple of grades right away. Second tip is reading their writing out aloud, because the best writing is just how you speak. And when you're forced to read your writing out aloud, you can see the sentences that don't make sense. You can see the sentences where if you said that to someone in real life, they would not understand what you're saying. And so it's a very effective way of helping your child pick out these areas where they can improve themselves. And finally, number 3, writing is like any skill. You need to practice it regularly to be able to improve, and you need feedback. This is really the most important thing. You want to show your child a strength, something they did really well, and one key thing to focus on in their next piece. And so good luck. I look forward to seeing and hearing from you how you went implementing these tips with your child. And otherwise, if you want some help from us helping your child implement these 3 key tips, there's information below this video on how you can do that. So good luck. I look forward to hearing of your child's improved writing skills.